What movie, TV show character was made to be nice but was an asshole?
Emily from Emily in Paris. Terrible FKN person in every way.
People literally have, always, themed weddings because they think Snape's story is romantic.
Bloom from Winx Club. Bossy wanted all the attention for herself.
Jim from The Office constantly picking on a guy just trying to do his job. Hitting on a woman he knows was in a relationship, making her emotionally cheat on her fiancé for years. Unable to take responsibility for his actions. Can barely manage people and shuts down as soon as things are Jim is in.
Clark from the 100. She was supposed to be a strong leader but ended up being a psychopathic dictator. And it feels like the show didn't even mean for it to happen.
He also bought a house and quit his job and moved to another town without even consulting Pam.
Ross from Friends. I'm not one of those assholes who think Friends has aged terribly, because they made some jokes here and there. They made fun of everybody. But the more I rewatch it, the more Ross is no longer funny or sympathetic after season 4. Like, at all. Ross is everything that a guy should never be, and the fact that he's always portrayed as this good, sweet guy is disturbing when you take into account his behavior. And yes, I know it's a sitcom playing for laughs, but still. Why people were rooting for Rachel to end up with him is beyond me. The writers did such a good job showing how terrible they were for each other early on in the show.
Kailu.
Ted Mosby.
I think David Schwimmer is very funny. I think he has great comedic timing. So Ross has a special place in my heart. But he did act absolutely awful on multiple occasions. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Anne Hathaway's friends in The Devil Wears Prada. Remember early on in the show when Pam is describing her dream house and she breaks down crying because she knows she'll never get it? I always think about that, when Jim buys a house without telling her. She really never got her dream house and that's sad.
I agree he did some assholish things, but you're putting so much on just him like no one else did anything. Picking on a guy, just trying to do his job. Dwight did everything he could to make Jim's life miserable as well and would try to get him fired, not to mention wanting power over all the other employees, not to make things better but just because he wanted power. Making Pam emotionally cheat. She's a full adult, she has agency and decides what to do herself. You can't make someone cheat. It's a choice.
I get irrationally upset when people act like Snape was a good person. He was a monster. He psychologically abused Neville to a point that Neville's greatest fear was Snape. This is a boy whose parents were literally tortured to a point where they lose their minds, and he is more afraid of Snape than anything else. He only helped the good side because he was obsessed with Lily, someone who very clearly was not returning the feelings at any point. He literally only turned to try and save her life, not because he realized he was on the wrong side. He is a disgusting creature and should be considered one of the great villains of the series.
Lily in HIMYM.
Also that scene where he is crying over her corpse while ignoring her baby.
Fuck Kyle.
Classic Schmosby.
Piper Chapman from ITNB. Hated her by season 2.
In the books it's even worse. He does not give a flying that Voldemort was going after the family. Only Lily. He could not care less if Lily's son was killed by Voldemort.
Additionally, the shock Pikachu at the consequences of her regular bad choices.
Carrie Bradshaw.
JD from Scrubs is a hoosh. I love the show, but it gets harder and harder to watch each rewatch since he treats women and his friends like a lot and is sort of an entitled brat.
Jerry from Tom and Jerry.
Jacob on lost the arrogance and presumption to put so many people through so much just to win a philosophical argument. An argument you were wrong about. With the angry spirit of your deceased brother, whom you killed in the first place.
A lot of people listing Ross and Ted Mosby, but I'd add Xander Harris to the list. He's literally described as the heart of the group, yet does a lot of not okay things in his relationships with women, and can act pretty to all of his friends.
Making her emotionally wow, a lot of unpacking in your post.
A friend of mine watches this. The first thought I had about her when I watched it with her was how bad of a person she is, the character, not my friend.
Olivia Pope from Scandal was a terrible human being.
Yes, I get the complaints about Ted. He can be an immature, but it feels like unintended consequences or things played off for comedy, with the exception of cheating on Victoria, and then getting Victoria to cheat. But Lily, she was such a selfish person, running off on Marshall every chance she gets. If things were hard, she'd just leave. Literally incapable of communicating her emotions, and it tortures Marshall. Calls off the wedding because after years together, she no longer thinks she can accomplish her dreams with him, even though he's the one person who constantly supported her. Comes back and just expects Marshall to have waited. Gets upset later when he didn't. Saddles him with so much debt that he didn't know about. It forced him to give up his dream career to pay it off. Then, when it's all coming together and he can finally make a real difference, she again wants to up and leave. And she never once apologized.
All the main characters in Himmem are pretty awful except Marshall.
Tori from Victorious.
Yes, now I'm living in the age she was in the show as a single woman. I see just how terribly immature she behaved and how clingy she was. She supposedly comes across as the unlucky and loved one, but she doesn't half bring the problem on herself.
Also, were we just going to pretend that chefs don't work the exact same hours as Andy? He would never be home before midnight.
True. The cat wants to chill and relax. The mouse is always trying to mess with him.
Her friends and BF are the worst.
If Harry was a girl that looked like Lily, people might actually realize how terrible Snape is.
Hot take. Caillou is intended to be in
Lorelai and Rory Gilmore.
The tall girl from Tall Girl.
And when Malfoy cast a hex on Hermione that made her teeth grow larger, Snape just mocked her and said, "I see no difference," and she ran out of class crying. Not to mention he calls her an insufferable know-it-all when she answers a question that no one else knows.
I feel like Patrick from SpongeBob started out as earnest but and kinda turned into an.
He literally threatened to a child's pet in class. In front of the entire class.
Peter Pan.
Hyde in that 70s show, he was a pretty friend.
The whole thing with Carrie is that she is an unformed person to a certain degree. The other three representing aspects of her personality, or at least facets of her life. The one that embraces her life, the one that embraces her career, and the one that embraces the desire to be taken care of and settle herself is a kind of an empty vessel onto which one can project. She is also a bit of a selfish. So maybe she represents that personality trait. I don't think she is ever intended to be, may have ended up watching a lot of in the city thanks to my wife. Perhaps I entertained myself by over-analyzing it. Who's to say?
Princess Bubble Gum from Adventure Time. She does some real messed up stuff and doesn't really get any comeuppance, and no, she really doesn't get much character development.
Every character in The Big Bang Theory is toxic, and all the jokes are them either being toxic or pointing out how they're toxic.
Worse than doesn't care. Dumbledore spells out that Snape asked Voldy to just James and Harry and give Lily to him. And Snape's response isn't even a denial, he croaked, "Save her." It's so wild how much people ignore that Snape's story isn't a redemption because he never, ever admits his actions were remotely wrong.
The episode where she argues with Charlotte because Charlotte didn't agree to give her thousands of dollars. Carrie has a wardrobe full of designer clothes. Sell some of them before screaming at your friends.
Steve Urkel, bursting into his neighbor's house every day without their knowledge or permission, sometimes breaking their stuff with his clumsiness, etc.
Mostly the boyfriend, who I refuse to identify by his name because he sucks that much. Lily is kinda crappy, but mostly out of concern for Andy. She doesn't understand why Andy is changing so much, and, although it comes across as stubbornness, it's mostly for Andy's sake. The boyfriend though, he's just the *** worst. He complains that Andy always has to work late. Okay, you're a sous chef at a high-end restaurant in Manhattan. There is zero chance that means you're not working every night and weekend and overtime every week. It's completely hypocritical. I also hate that he complains about the cost of strawberries at Dean and DeLuca while clearly holding a carton of Driscoll's, which are cheap and available at any conventional grocery store. That's more a complaint against the lazy production designer though.